Yo, step into the darkness where shadows lurk, where every creak, moan leaves your mind berserk. In the heart of that night where feet take flight, horror grip, tiny so no escaping its might. Haunted halls and with the echo with whispers untold, and chilling silence tales of our old from the deep of abyss where nightmares reside. A wave tale of terror, let your fear collide. Welcome to the realm where nightmares stream, in the land of horror where only the brave survives. I feel the street down your spine, the chill in the air, in the kingdom darkness where we dare to share. Blood moon rise, casting shadows long, and the maze with fear where you don't belong. Eyes glow in the dark, watching every move, and this quest games where nothing left to prove. Monsters under the bed, with ghosts in the mist, in the house of horrors with a soul kiss.
Hey Veronica, have you ever heard about the November fog? It's about a town that gets swallowed by a fog, revealing dark secrets.
Yes, the atmosphere is so eerie, and the way the fog hides the truth is chilling.
It was a cold and foggy evening in November. Jake was driving home from work, feeling tired and bored. He turned on the radio, hoping to find some music to keep him awake. He scanned through the stations, but all he heard was static and news reports about the mysterious disappearances that had been happening in the area. He shrugged and turned off the radio. He didn't believe in any of that supernatural stuff. He was a rational and logical person who trusted science and facts. He thought the disappearances were probably the work of some serial killer or cult, and that the police would catch them soon. He drove on, following the familiar route to his house. He lived in a small town surrounded by woods and fields. He liked the quiet and peaceful life, away from the noise and stress of the city. He had a nice house, a loving wife, and a cute dog. He was happy and content. He smiled as he saw the sign that welcomed him to his town. He was almost home. He sped up a little, eager to see his family. He noticed that the fog was getting thicker and that the street lights were dim and blurry. He turned on his headlights, but they didn't seem to help much. He squinted his eyes, trying to see the road ahead. He slowed down, feeling a bit nervous. He had driven this road 1,000 times, but he felt like he was lost. He couldn't see any landmarks or signs, just a wall of white mist. He wondered if he had taken a wrong turn somewhere, or if the fog had disoriented him. He checked his phone, hoping to use the GPS, but he saw that he had no signal and that his battery was low. He cursed and threw the phone on the passenger seat. He decided to keep driving, hoping to find his way out of the fog. He drove for what seemed like an eternity, but he didn't see anything familiar. He started to panic, feeling trapped and alone. He wondered if he was going in circles, or if he had entered some kind of twilight zone. He felt a cold sweat on his forehead and a tightness in his chest. He decided to stop the car and get out. Maybe he could find someone to help him, or at least get some fresh air. He parked the car on the side of the road and opened the door. He stepped out and felt a chill in the air. He wrapped his coat around him and looked around. He saw nothing but fog. He couldn't even see his car or the road. He felt like he was in a cloud or a dream. He heard nothing but silence. He felt like he was alone in the world. He called out, hoping to hear a response, but there was no answer. He called out again, louder, but there was still no answer. He felt a surge of fear and ran back to his car. He reached for the door handle, but it was locked. He pulled and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. He looked inside and saw his keys on the ignition. He had locked himself out. He banged on the window, hoping to break it, but it was too strong. He screamed and cursed, but no one heard him. He felt a tear roll down his cheek and a sob escape his throat. He was trapped. He leaned on the car, feeling hopeless and helpless. He wondered if he would ever see his family again, or if he would die in the fog. He wondered if anyone would ever find him, or if he would disappear like the others. He closed his eyes and prayed for a miracle. He waited for the fog to lift, or for someone to come. He waited for a long time, but nothing happened. He opened his eyes and saw that the fog was still there. He felt a cold hand on his shoulder and a whisper in his ear. "You will never be able to find way home." He turned around and saw a black, scary shadow in the fog coming towards him. He screamed and closed his eyes, hoping to wake up from this nightmare. He felt a jolt of pain, and then nothing. He opened his eyes and saw his bedroom. He was lying on his bed, covered in sweat. He looked at the clock and saw that it was morning. He sighed with relief and realized that it was all a dream. He got up and walked to the window. He pulled the curtains and saw the town. It was covered in a canopy of fog. He felt a chill in his spine and a doubt in his mind. Was it really a dream?
Hey Veronica, have you ever checked out the rental house? It's about the couple who discovers their vacation home and hiding in the dark secrets.
Yes, the creepy noises and sudden appearances really had me on edge.
Three friends, Jake, Sam, and Mia, moved to a small town for a new job. They were looking for a place to stay and found a cheap rental house on a hill. The house was old and spacious, with 3 bedrooms, 1 on the main floor and 2 on the second floor. The owner lived out of town and accepted payment online. The rent was very low, but the friends had to pay for the maintenance and utilities themselves. They thought they had found a great deal and moved in right away. They decided to take 1 bedroom each. Jake chose the master bedroom on the main floor, while Sam and Mia took the ones upstairs. They settled in and started their new job at the local newspaper. Everything seemed fine for the first few days, until Jake began to act strangely. He complained that he heard weird noises at night, sometimes like a baby crying, sometimes like a woman sobbing. He also said he saw a shadowy figure of a woman in his room, standing by the window or the closet. He was scared and couldn't sleep well. Sam and Mia thought he was joking or imagining things. They teased him and told him to stop being a baby. One night, they decided to prove him wrong. They agreed to sleep together in Jake's room and stay awake until they heard or saw something. They brought their sleeping bags and pillows and made a camp on the floor. They chatted and laughed until midnight, then turned off the lights and waited. Nothing happened for a while. They heard the usual sounds of the house creaking and the wind blowing. They started to get bored and sleepy. They were about to give up and go back to their rooms when they heard it, a faint sound of a baby crying. It was coming from somewhere inside the house. They looked at each other in disbelief. They listened carefully and realized it was coming from the basement. They wondered if there was a baby in the house or if it was a prank or a recording. They decided to investigate. They got up and grabbed a flashlight. They opened the door and walked down the hall. They found the door to the basement and opened it. They saw a dark staircase leading down. They hesitated, but then went down. The basement was cold and damp. There were boxes and furniture piled up in the corners. There was a musty smell in the air. The sound of the baby crying was louder now. They followed it to the back of the basement. There, they saw a crib. They approached the crib and shone the flashlight on it. They gasped. There was a baby in the crib, a dead baby. Its skin was pale and blue. Its eyes were wide open and staring. Its mouth was open and screaming. It was the source of the crying. They screamed too. They dropped the flashlight and ran back to the stairs. They tripped and fell, but got up and kept running. They reached the door and slammed it behind them. They ran back to Jake's room and locked the door. They were terrified and shaking. They tried to calm down and think of an explanation. They wondered if the baby was real or a doll. They wondered if someone had put it there as a joke or a trap. They wondered if they were dreaming or hallucinating. They wondered if they were going crazy. They looked at the clock. It was 3:10 a.m. They decided to call the police. They reached for their phones, but they were dead. They had no signal, no battery, no power. They were cut off from the outside world. They heard a knock on the door. They froze. They heard a voice, a woman's voice. It was soft and sad. "Please, let me in. I need to see my baby. I need to hold him. I need to love him. Please, let me in." They recognized the voice. It was the voice of the woman they had seen in the shadows. The voice of the ghost. The voice of the mother. They screamed again. They backed away from the door. They looked for a way out. They saw the window. They ran to it and tried to open it. It was stuck. They pushed and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. They were trapped. They heard the doorknob turn. They heard the door open. They heard the footsteps. They heard the crying. They heard the sobbing. They heard the whispering. "Please, let me see my baby. Please, let me hold him. Please, let me love him." They turned around and saw her. She was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a white dress stained with blood. She had long black hair covering her face. She had a knife in her hand. She had a smile on her lips. She walked towards them slowly. She reached out her hand. She said one word, "Please."
Hey Veronica, have you heard the Campfire Tales? It's a collection of spooky stories told around the fire that really brings the chills.
Yes. I like how each tale builds in suspense. The one about the shadow in the woods was particularly haunting.
Four friends, Jake, Mia, Leo, and Zoe, decided to go camping in the woods for a weekend getaway. They packed their tents, sleeping bags, food, and flashlights, and drove to a secluded spot near a lake. They set up their campsite and started a fire to roast some marshmallows. They were having a good time, telling jokes and stories when they heard a loud howl in the distance. They looked at each other nervously, wondering what it was. "Maybe it's just a coyote," Jake said, trying to sound calm. "Or a wolf," Mia added, shivering. "Or a bear," Leo joked, making a claw gesture. "Or a monster," Zoe whispered, half seriously. They laughed nervously and tried to ignore the sound. They continued to chat and eat their snacks, but they couldn't shake off the feeling that something was watching them from the dark. Suddenly, they heard another howl, this time louder and closer. They all jumped and looked around, trying to see where it came from. "Did you hear that?" Maya asked, clutching Jake's arm. "Yeah, I heard it," Jake said, grabbing a flashlight. "Maybe we should check it out." "Are you crazy?" Leo said, "We should stay here and wait for it to go away." "What if it doesn't go away?" Zoe said, "What if it comes closer?" They argued for a while, until Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. He got up and walked toward the direction of the howl, shining his flashlight into the trees. "Jake, wait," Mia called after him. "Don't go alone." But Jake didn't listen. He was curious and brave, and he wanted to prove himself. He walked deeper into the woods, following the sound. He soon regretted his decision. As he walked further away from the campfire, he realized how dark and quiet it was. He could barely see anything in front of him, except for the occasional glint of his flashlight on a branch or a rock. He could hear his own heartbeat and breathing, and nothing else. He started to feel scared and wished he had stayed with his friends. He wondered if he should turn back, but he didn't want to look like a coward. He told himself that it was probably nothing, just an animal or a prankster. He kept walking until he reached a clearing. There he saw something that made him freeze in terror. It was a large creature, standing on two legs, covered in fur, with glowing red eyes and sharp teeth. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a man. It was holding the carcass of a deer in its hands. Staring right at him, Jake screamed and dropped his flashlight. He turned around and ran as fast as he could back to the campsite. He hoped that his friends were still there, that they hadn't left him behind or been attacked by the beast. He ran for what seemed like an eternity until he saw the flickering light of the fire. He shouted for help and ran toward it. He reached the campsite and saw his friends waiting for him. They looked relieved and worried at the same time. "Jake, you're alive," Mia exclaimed, hugging him. "What happened? Where were you?" Leo asked. "What did you see?" Zoe asked. Jake was panting and shaking. He tried to tell them what he had seen, but he couldn't form coherent words. He just pointed at the woods and muttered something about a werewolf. They looked at him incredulously and thought he was joking or hallucinating. They tried to calm him down and reassure him that there was no such thing as werewolves. But they were wrong. As they were talking, they heard another howl from the woods. This time it was followed by another one and another. They realized that there was not one werewolf, but many of them, and they were coming for them. They grabbed their things and ran to their car, hoping to escape before it was too late. But they were too slow. The werewolves emerged from the trees and surrounded them. They snarled and growled, baring their fangs. They attacked them with their claws and teeth, tearing them apart. The campfire burned out. The night was silent again.